The slap echoed through the office like a gunshot. My cheek burned as I stared at Blake Harrison, our new department director, who had been on the job for exactly 3 weeks. His hand was still raised, his face twisted with rage that seemed way too intense for our conversation about my retirement timeline. "Hand over your key card, Iris," he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "You're done here. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. I touched my stinging cheek, feeling the heat spread across my skin. In 37 years at Morrison Financial Services, no one had ever laid a hand on me. I had survived 5 different restructuring plans, trained dozens of new employees, and helped build this department from 12 people to over 60. The office had gone completely silent. I could see my coworkers pretending to work while stealing glances at us through the glass walls of Blake's corner office. Some looked shocked, others seemed scared, but none of them moved to help me. "I already told you," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not ready to retire. I have 2 more years until I'm eligible for full benefits." Blake stepped closer, his expensive cologne mixed with the smell of his morning coffee. "That's not your choice anymore." The whole confrontation had started 20 minutes earlier, when Blake called me into his office for what he said was a routine meeting. I should have known something was wrong when his assistant Angela avoided eye contact as I walked past her desk. Blake had been hired from outside the company, some hotshot from a tech startup in San Francisco. He was 34 years old with perfectly styled hair and suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. From day one, he made it clear that he thought our department was full of dead weight. "Iris, I've been reviewing personnel files," he had said, not bothering to look up from his laptop. "You're 63 years old. Don't you think it's time to step aside and let someone younger take over your responsibilities?" I had been managing the compliance division for 8 years, ever since my old supervisor retired. My team handled all the regulatory reporting for the company's investment portfolios, work that required years of experience to do correctly. "My age has nothing to do with my ability to do this job," I replied. "My performance reviews have been excellent every year." That's when his expression darkened, and I realized this wasn't really a discussion. Blake leaned back in his chair with that smug smile I was already starting to hate. He opened a manila folder and pulled out a document I recognized immediately. It was the early retirement package that HR had been pushing on employees over 60 for the past 6 months. "The company is prepared to offer you a very generous early retirement package," he said, sliding the papers across his desk. 18 months of salary, full health benefits for 2 years, and a bonus of $50,000 if you sign by the end of this week. I didn't touch the papers. I had already seen this offer twice before and turned it down both times. The package looked good on paper, but retiring now would cost me over $40,000 in pension benefits that I would get if I waited until I was 65. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I'm not interested in retiring early. I enjoy my work, and my team depends on me." Blake's jaw tightened. "Your team needs fresh leadership. New ideas. Someone who understands how modern business works." "Modern business still requires people who understand federal regulations," I pointed out. "That takes experience, not fresh ideas." That's when he stood up, his face flushing red. "You're being unreasonable, Iris. This is a generous offer. And I'm politely declining it." That's when he hit me. After the slap, Blake grabbed his phone and called security before I could even process what had happened. My cheek was throbbing, and I could taste blood where I had bitten my tongue. But my mind was racing faster than my heart. "Yes, I need security in my office immediately," Blake said into the phone, his voice suddenly calm and professional. "We have a situation with an employee who's being disruptive." Disruptive. He was calling me disruptive after he had just assaulted me in his office. "You can't do this," I said, finding my voice. "I haven't done anything wrong. You just committed assault in front of witnesses." Blake glanced toward the office floor where several employees were still pretending not to watch through the glass walls. "I don't see any witnesses. Do you? And I think everyone would agree that you were being aggressive and threatening during our meeting." The calculating look in his eyes made my blood run cold. This wasn't an angry outburst. This was planned. He had brought me in here intending to force me out, and when I didn't cooperate, he decided to create a reason to fire me immediately. My key card, he repeated, holding out his hand expectantly. I looked down at the plastic card clipped to my shirt. It wasn't just my access to the building. It was my connection to 37 years of work, relationships, and purpose. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, both men I recognized from the lobby. They looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from foot to foot as they took in the scene. Ms. Chun here is being terminated for aggressive behavior toward management, Blake announced. Please escort her to her desk to collect personal items, then see her out of the building.
Wait.
Chun? I realized he didn't even know my last name. After 3 weeks of working in the same department, he still thought I was Patricia Chun from accounting. My name is Iris Martinez. I corrected him. And I'm not being aggressive. This man just slapped me across the face because I refused his retirement offer. The security guards exchanged glances. Tom, the older one, had been working building security for 15 years. He knew me well enough to nod hello every morning when I came through the lobby. Sir, Tom said carefully, maybe we should call HR before we do anything else. There might be some confusion here. Blake's face went red again. There's no confusion. This employee refused a direct order and became threatening. I want her removed from the premises immediately. He pulled out his cell phone and started taking pictures of his desk, which looked perfectly normal to me. Then he messed up his hair slightly and took a selfie that made him look disheveled. For documentation purposes, he explained with that cold smile. As the security guards waited for instructions from their supervisor, I caught sight of Angela hovering near the door. Blake's assistant had been watching everything, and she looked scared. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before I saw something that gave me hope. She was holding her phone, and the red recording light was still blinking. Angela had recorded the entire confrontation, including the slap. She had witnessed Blake's lies to security, and she had evidence that could prove what really happened in this office. Angela, Blake snapped, noticing her for the first time. Get back to your desk. This doesn't concern you. She scurried away, but I caught her looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was she trying to help me, or was she just afraid of getting involved? Tom's radio crackled, and he stepped away to answer it. After a brief conversation, he came back with a different attitude. Sir, my supervisor says we need to wait for HR before we escort anyone out of the building. Company policy when there's been an allegation of workplace violence. Blake's confident demeanor faltered for just a moment. Violence? I'm the one who was threatened. Check your security cameras if you don't believe me. That's when I remembered something important. The security cameras in the building were managed by an outside company, not by Morrison Financial Services. And that company had been purchased 6 months ago by my son's technology firm. While Blake argued with security about company policies, I used the confusion to step outside his office. My coworkers immediately surrounded me, their faces full of concern and questions. Are you okay? Whispered Janet from the accounting team. We heard shouting. Did he really hit you? Asked Mike from investments, looking shocked. Before I could answer, Blake's voice cut through the murmur of conversations. Everyone back to work. This is a private personnel matter. But nobody moved. 37 years of building relationships with my coworkers meant something. These people knew me, knew my character, knew that I wasn't the type to be aggressive or threatening to anyone. Sandra from HR appeared at the elevator, looking flustered and carrying a thick file folder. She hurried over to where we were standing. What exactly is going on here? She demanded, looking back and forth between Blake and me. Blake immediately launched into his version of events. According to him, I had become hostile when offered the early retirement package, had used threatening language, and had refused to follow his direct orders as department head. That's not what happened, I said simply. He slapped me when I declined his retirement offer. Sandra's eyes widened. In the 15 years I had known her, I had never seen her look so surprised. He did what? I have witnesses, I added, nodding toward Angela, who was pretending to organize files at her desk. Blake stepped between us. Sandra, This employee is being disruptive and making false accusations. I want her terminated immediately for insubordination. Sandra held up her hand to stop Blake from continuing. Let me be very clear about something. No employee gets terminated without a proper investigation, especially when there are allegations of physical assault. This is not how we handle personnel issues at Morrison Financial. I could see Blake's frustration building again. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially by someone he probably thought of as just another middle-aged woman in HR. I am the department director, he said through gritted teeth. I have the authority to fire employees who report to me. You have the authority to recommend termination after following proper procedures, Sandra corrected him. But you cannot physically assault employees under any circumstances. Blake laughed, but it sounded forced. Assault? I barely touched her. She's exaggerating to save her job. Sandra turned to me with a serious expression. Iris, I need to ask you directly. Did Blake Harrison strike you during your meeting?
Yes.
He slapped me across the face when I refused to accept the early retirement package. And are there witnesses to this incident? I glanced toward Angela, who was still watching nervously from her desk. His assistant was present when it happened. Blake spun around to look at Angela, who immediately buried her face in her computer screen. Angela wasn't even in the room. She's confused. But Sandra was already walking toward Angela's desk. Angela, I need to speak with you privately.
Right now.
While Sandra questioned Angela in the conference room, I sat at my desk trying to process everything that had happened. My cheeks still stung, and I could feel it swelling slightly where Blake had hit me. Several coworkers stopped by to check on me, offering ice packs and words of support. Blake had retreated to his office, but I could see him through the glass walls making phone calls. His body language suggested he was getting increasingly agitated with whoever he was talking to. My phone buzzed with a text message from my son Carlos. Mom, I just got a call from our security monitoring service. They said there was an incident at your building today and asked if I wanted copies of the relevant footage. Should I be worried? My heart skipped a beat. Carlos's company did manage the security system for our building. If the cameras had caught Blake slapping me, I would have proof of what really happened. I texted back quickly. Yes, please get the footage from today around 2 p.m., conference room 14B. I'll explain later. Within minutes, he responded. Already downloaded. Mom, are you okay? This looks serious. I glanced around the office to make sure no one was watching, then called Carlos from my desk phone. I'm fine, I said quietly when he answered. But I need you to save that footage somewhere safe. Don't let anyone else access it until I figure out what to do next. Mom, what happened? The footage shows someone hitting you. Sandra emerged from the conference room with Angela, both of them looking serious. Angela kept glancing nervously toward Blake's office, while Sandra walked directly to my desk. Iris, I need you to come with me to the HR office. We need to file an official incident report. Blake must have seen us moving because he immediately came out of his office. Sandra, what did Angela tell you? Because I can assure you that she wasn't present during my meeting with Iris. Sandra stopped walking and turned to face him. Angela has provided a statement about what she witnessed today. We'll be conducting a full investigation starting immediately. Investigation. Blake's voice got higher. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to run a department, not get dragged into some he said nonsense. Physical assault is not nonsense, Sandra replied coldly. It's a serious violation of company policy and potentially a criminal matter. Blake's face went pale. Criminal matter? Sandra, you're overreacting. Even if I did accidentally bump into her, which I didn't, it was hardly assault. Interesting. Now, he was admitting that something physical might have happened, even if he was calling it accidental. The good news, Sandra continued, is that we have security footage of all management offices, so we'll be able to see exactly what occurred. Blake's expression changed instantly. For the first time since the slap, he looked genuinely worried. Security footage, he repeated. Of course. All management offices have been monitored since the merger last year. Didn't you read your orientation materials? In Sandra's office, I gave a detailed statement about everything that had happened, from Blake's initial retirement pressure to the slap and his demand for my key card. Sandra took notes carefully, asking clarifying questions about times, exact words, and witnesses. Iris, I want you to know that we take these allegations very seriously, she said when I finished. No employee should ever be subjected to physical violence in the workplace. What happens next? I asked. First, we'll review the security footage to verify your account of what happened. Then we'll interview everyone who might have witnessed the incident or its aftermath. Blake will be suspended with pay pending the investigation. Suspended? I felt a surge of satisfaction, followed immediately by worry. Will he try to retaliate against me? Sandra leaned forward with a reassuring expression. Blake will not be allowed on company property during the investigation. You'll be perfectly safe here. What about my job? He was trying to force me to retire. Your position is secure. In fact, you'll be acting department director until this situation is resolved. I stared at her in disbelief. Acting director? After 37 years of watching other people get promoted above me, I was finally going to run the department myself. There's something else, Sandra continued. Angela provided us with some additional information that we need to investigate. She pulled out her phone and played a video that made my jaw drop. The video was shaky and the audio wasn't perfect, but it clearly showed Blake slapping me and then immediately calling security. Even better, it captured his conversation with security where he lied about what had happened and took fake photos to make himself look disheveled. Angela recorded this on her phone? I asked. She said she started recording when Blake's voice got loud because she was concerned about both of you. She's worked for several department heads over the years, and she's never seen anyone behave like Blake. The video was damning evidence, but Sandra wasn't finished. Angela also gave us copies of emails that Blake sent to several department heads asking about early retirement packages for employees over 60. He specifically mentioned wanting to clear out dead weight and bring in fresh talent. My stomach dropped. He's targeting other older employees? It appears so. We found similar emails about 4 other employees in various departments. All of them are over 55 and have been with the company for more than 20 years. This wasn't just about me. Blake was systematically trying to force out experienced employees, probably to replace them with younger, cheaper workers. What he had done to me was just the beginning of a much larger plan. There's more, Sandra said grimly. We also found emails between Blake and someone at a recruiting firm discussing replacement candidates for several positions that haven't even been posted yet. As Sandra continued explaining what they had discovered in Blake's emails, I felt a mixture of vindication and anger. Blake hadn't just lost his temper with me. He had been planning to force out multiple employees, and he had been stupid enough to document his illegal age discrimination in writing. The company's legal department is reviewing everything now, Sandra said. This could result in serious legal consequences for Blake personally, not just termination. What about the other employees he was targeting? I asked. We're contacting each of them today to inform them of the situation. None of them will be forced to retire early, and we'll be offering additional protections to make sure there's no retaliation. My phone buzzed with another message from Carlos. Mom, I've been reviewing more of the security footage from this week. You need to see this. I showed Sandra the message. My son's company manages the security system here. He says there's more footage we should see. Sandra nodded. We'll want to get copies of everything relevant to the investigation. An hour later, Carlos arrived at the office with a laptop full of security footage that painted an even worse picture of Blake's behavior. The recordings showed him having heated arguments with several employees over the past 3 weeks, including a confrontation with Patricia Chun where he had pointed his finger aggressively at her face. Look at this one from last Tuesday, Carlos said, pulling up another video. He's going through personnel files and taking pictures of specific pages with his phone. The footage clearly showed Blake photographing employee birth dates, salary information, and performance reviews. He had been building a case against older employees from his first week on the job. Armed with overwhelming evidence of Blake's misconduct, Sandra called an emergency meeting with the company's senior management team. I wasn't included in the meeting, but word spread quickly through the office that something big was happening. While I waited for news, I focused on managing the department in Blake's absence. It felt strange sitting in his office, using his computer, making decisions that would have been his responsibility just hours earlier. Angela knocked on the door around 4 p.m. with a cup of coffee and a nervous smile. "I wanted to apologize," she said. "I should have spoken up sooner about his behavior. I knew he was being inappropriate with employees, but I was afraid I would lose my job if I complained." "You don't need to apologize," I told her. "You did the right thing by recording what happened today. That video probably saved my job."
She sat down across from the desk.
"Can I ask you something? Are you really not planning to retire soon?" I thought about the question. 24 hours ago, I had been counting down the days until I could afford to retire with full benefits. But sitting in this office, handling departmental responsibilities, I realized I wasn't ready to stop working. "I love my job," I said simply. "I'm good at what I do, and I think I have more to contribute." Angela smiled. "Blake kept saying you were too old to understand modern business. But you've been teaching me about regulatory compliance for 2 years, and you always know more than anyone else in the room." Sandra returned from the management meeting with news that was both satisfying and shocking. "Blake has been terminated immediately," she announced. "Security escorted him from the building about an hour ago. He will not be returning." "What about the investigation?" The evidence was overwhelming. Between the video, the emails, and the security footage your son provided, we had more than enough to terminate him for cause. The legal department is also considering whether to pursue criminal charges for assault. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Blake was gone, and I wouldn't have to worry about retaliation or further harassment. "There's more," Sandra continued. "The CEO wants to meet with you tomorrow morning. The board is furious about what happened, and they want to make sure you know that Blake's behavior does not represent company values." Am I in trouble for anything? Quite the opposite. They're embarrassed that a department director could behave so badly without anyone noticing the warning signs. You handled this situation with professionalism and dignity, and they want to recognize that. That evening, I called my daughter Maria to tell her what had happened. She was horrified by Blake's behavior, but proud of how I had stood up for myself. "Mom, you should sue him personally for assault," she said. "And maybe sue the company too for hiring someone like that. I just want to put this behind me and focus on my work." But as I hung up the phone, I realized that maybe Maria was right. Blake had assaulted me, tried to force me into early retirement, and planned to target other older employees. Should there be consequences beyond just losing his job? The meeting with CEO Harrison Webb the next morning was unlike anything I had experienced in 37 years with the company. He apologized personally for Blake's behavior, assured me that the company valued experienced employees, and offered me a permanent promotion to department director. "We made a serious mistake hiring Blake Harrison without properly vetting his management style," he said. "His behavior was completely unacceptable, and we want to make sure you know that." The promotion came with a significant salary increase, a larger office, and a seat on the senior management team. After decades of being overlooked for advancement, I was suddenly being offered more than I had ever imagined. "There's one more thing," Webb continued. "The board wants to review our hiring practices for management positions. We'd like you to be part of that review process to help us avoid making similar mistakes in the future." I accepted the promotion immediately. Not because I wanted revenge against Blake, but because I genuinely wanted to help create a better workplace for all employees. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my new responsibilities. The department ran smoothly under my leadership, and several employees commented that they felt more comfortable bringing concerns to me than they had with Blake. Angela became my assistant, and she proved to be incredibly capable when she wasn't afraid of being yelled at by her boss. "You know what's funny?" she said one afternoon while we were reviewing quarterly reports. "Blake kept saying this department needed fresh ideas and modern leadership. But productivity has actually increased since you took over." 3 months later, I received a phone call that caught me completely off guard. It was from an attorney representing Blake Harrison. "Ms. Martinez, my client would like to discuss a settlement regarding the incident that occurred at Morrison Financial Services," the lawyer said. "A settlement? For what?" "Mr. Harrison believes that his termination was unjustified and that he was the victim of age discrimination. He's prepared to file a lawsuit against both you and the company unless we can reach a reasonable settlement." I almost laughed out loud. Blake was claiming age discrimination? He was 34 years old and had been fired for assaulting me and planning to force out older employees. I think you have your facts confused, I told the attorney. Your client was terminated for assault and age discrimination against older employees. That's not how Mr. Harrison remembers the situation. He has witnesses who will testify that you were the aggressor in your final meeting. This was ridiculous, but I knew I needed to take it seriously. I immediately called Sandra in HR and our legal department to report the threatening phone call. Our company attorney, Patricia Williams, was not impressed with Blake's legal strategy. He's going to have a hard time claiming age discrimination when we have emails of him planning to force out employees over 50, she said. And we have video evidence of him assaulting you. So what happens now? We wait for him to actually file a lawsuit, which he probably won't do once his attorney sees our evidence. This sounds like a desperate attempt to get money out of us.
Patricia was right.
Blake never filed a lawsuit, but the threatened legal action made me realize something important. I had been so focused on moving forward with my career that I hadn't fully processed the emotional impact of being assaulted at work. I decided to seek counseling to help me deal with the lingering effects of the incident. My therapist, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, helped me understand that my response to the situation had been both normal and healthy. You stood up for yourself when someone tried to bully you into leaving your job, she said during one of our sessions. That took courage, especially against someone in a position of power. I keep wondering if I should have handled it differently. How so? Maybe I should have been more diplomatic. Maybe I could have avoided the whole confrontation. Dr. Walsh shook her head. Iris, you were presented with an early retirement package and you politely declined. There was nothing aggressive or inappropriate about your response. Blake chose to escalate the situation when he didn't get his way. The counseling sessions helped me understand that Blake's behavior wasn't really about me at all. He was an insecure man who felt threatened by experienced employees and tried to use intimidation to get what he wanted. The fact that he resorted to physical violence tells you everything you need to know about his character, Dr. Walsh explained. You handled the situation with dignity and professionalism. 6 months after Blake's termination, I received an unexpected phone call from Patricia Chun in accounting. She was one of the other employees Blake had been planning to force into early retirement. Iris, I wanted to thank you for what you did, she said. If you hadn't stood up to Blake, I think I would have been his next target. How are things going for you now? Much better. The new management team has been really supportive, and I actually got promoted to senior accountant last month. Patricia's call reminded me that Blake's plan had targeted multiple employees. I wondered what had happened to the others, so I reached out to Sandra in HR for an update. All 4 of the other employees Blake was targeting are still with the company, Sandra reported. In fact, 3 of them have received promotions or raises since Blake was terminated. It turns out they were all high performers who were being unfairly targeted because of their age. Have there been any other issues with age discrimination? Actually, your situation led to a company-wide review of our management practices. We've implemented new training programs and updated our policies to prevent similar situations. You really made a difference for everyone. I hadn't thought about the broader impact of my decision to fight back against Blake. By standing up for myself, I had inadvertently protected other employees and helped improve company policies. There's one more thing, Sandra added. The board would like you to speak at our annual management conference about creating inclusive workplaces for employees of all ages. The management conference was held at a downtown hotel with over 200 company managers in attendance. I was nervous about speaking in front of such a large group, but I felt it was important to share what I had learned from my experience with Blake. My presentation focused on the value of experienced employees and the importance of creating respectful workplaces for people of all ages. I talked about the knowledge and skills that come with experience and how age diversity strengthens teams and improves decision-making. Discrimination against older workers isn't just wrong, I told the audience. It's bad for business. When you force out experienced employees, you lose institutional knowledge, customer relationships, and mentorship opportunities for younger staff. After my presentation, several managers approached me with questions and comments. Some shared their own experiences with age discrimination, while others asked for advice on managing diverse teams. One young manager, probably about Blake's age, stayed after everyone else had left. "Ms. Martinez, I wanted to apologize," he said nervously. "I've been thinking that some of the older employees in my department weren't keeping up with technology changes. Your presentation made me realize I might be making unfair assumptions." "What are you going to do differently?" I asked. "I'm going to have individual conversations with each of my team members to understand their goals and challenges. Maybe some of them just need additional training or support, not replacement." That conversation made the entire presentation worthwhile. If I could help one manager avoid Blake's mistakes, then sharing my story had been meaningful. A year after the incident with Blake, I was thriving in my role as department director. The team had grown from 60 employees to 75, and our department had received recognition for exceeding all performance targets. Angela had been promoted to assistant director, and she had become one of my most trusted colleagues. During our weekly team meetings, she often brought fresh perspectives that helped us solve complex problems. "You know what I learned from watching you handle the Blake situation?" she said during one of our meetings. "Sometimes the best way to deal with bullies is to document everything and let them destroy themselves with their own bad behavior." "What do you mean?" "Blake thought he could intimidate you into retiring because you were older, and he assumed you would be too scared to fight back. But he underestimated your strength and your intelligence. He also didn't realize that his emails and behavior were creating evidence against himself." Angela was right. Blake had assumed that age made me vulnerable, when in reality, my years of experience had taught me how to navigate difficult situations and protect myself professionally. "I also learned something about myself," I added. "I spent years thinking that keeping quiet and avoiding conflict was the professional thing to do. But sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and others, even when it's uncomfortable." My phone buzzed with a text message from Carlos. "Mom, I'm proud of you. Your conference presentation is being shared all over social media. Experience Matters is trending." The success of my conference presentation led to speaking invitations from other companies and professional organizations. I started giving talks about workplace respect, age diversity, and standing up to workplace bullies. Each speech was an opportunity to prevent other employees from experiencing what I had gone through with Blake. I met with HR directors, senior executives, and employee resource groups to discuss creating more inclusive workplaces. During one presentation to a group of women executives, an audience member asked a question that made me think deeply about my experience. "Do you think Blake's behavior was specifically about age discrimination, or was it broader workplace bullying that could have targeted anyone?" I considered the question carefully before answering. I think Blake was insecure about his own abilities, so he tried to eliminate anyone he saw as a threat. Experienced employees were threatening because we had knowledge and relationships he lacked. But he also targeted employees who couldn't fight back easily. What advice would you give to someone facing a similar situation? Document everything. Build alliances with colleagues. Know your rights under company policy and employment law. And don't let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is unprofessional. After the presentation, several attendees shared their own stories of workplace discrimination and bullying. I realized that my experience with Blake was unfortunately not unique, but my response had been unusual because most people don't have the resources or support to fight back effectively. That realization motivated me to get more involved in employee advocacy and workplace rights issues. 2 years after Blake's termination, I received a LinkedIn message that shocked me. It was from Blake himself. "Iris, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out because I've been doing a lot of thinking about what happened at Morrison Financial. I realize now that my behavior was completely inappropriate, and I owe you an apology." I stared at the message for several minutes before deciding to respond. "Blake, I appreciate you reaching out. What prompted this message after all this time?" His response came quickly. "I've been working with a career counselor and a therapist to understand why I behaved so badly in management roles. I realized that I was insecure about my abilities and took it out on employees who I saw as threats. What I did to you is wrong, and I'm sorry. Are you working somewhere new now?" "I'm actually working for myself now, doing consulting work. I've learned that I'm not cut out for managing people, At least not yet. I have a lot of work to do on myself first. The conversation continued for several messages. Blake seemed genuinely remorseful about his behavior, though I remained skeptical about his motives for reaching out. I know this doesn't undo what I did, he wrote, but I wanted you to know that losing my job at Morrison Financial was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to confront some serious problems with how I treat other people. Blake's apology made me reflect on how much my life had changed since that awful day in his office. The slap that had seemed like such a devastating moment had actually opened doors I never expected. I was now a department director earning more money than I had ever imagined. I was speaking at conferences and helping other companies create better workplaces. I had become an advocate for employee rights and workplace respect. Most importantly, I had learned that I was stronger and more capable than I had given myself credit for. 37 years of keeping my head down and avoiding conflict had made me think I was powerless, but standing up to Blake had shown me otherwise. My daughter Maria visited me at work one day and marveled at how different I seemed. "Mom, you seem so much more confident than you used to be," she observed. "It's like you finally realized your own worth." "I think you're right," I agreed. I spent so many years being grateful just to have a job that I forgot I deserved to be treated with respect. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had just taken Blake's retirement offer? I thought about the question seriously. I probably would have regretted it for the rest of my life. Not just financially, but because I would have let him win. I would have let him convince me that I was too old and irrelevant to contribute anymore. And now I know that experience and wisdom are valuable assets, not liabilities. I'm not ready to stop learning and growing and contributing. 5 years have passed since Blake slapped me and demanded my key card. I'm still working at Morrison Financial Services, though I'm finally starting to think seriously about retirement plans for when I turn 70. The department I manage has become one of the most successful in the company, and several of my employees have been promoted to leadership roles throughout the organization. Angela is now being considered for a director position in another department. I still speak regularly about workplace diversity and employee rights, and I serve on the board of a nonprofit organization that provides legal assistance to workers facing discrimination. Blake and I exchanged a few more messages over the years, and he seems to have genuinely changed his approach to working with people. He sent me a message last year when he got married, thanking me again for helping him become a better person. I'm not sure I would go that far, but I'm glad his experience taught him something valuable about treating people with respect. Last month, I was cleaning out old files when I found the early retirement package Blake had offered me 5 years ago. The financial terms that had seemed inadequate at the time now looked almost insulting compared to what I've earned by continuing to work. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was proving to myself that I had the strength to stand up to a bully and fight for what was right. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had been more timid, if I had just taken the slap and accepted early retirement rather than fighting back. I'm glad I'll never have to find out.